Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into Black Cannabis Week. If you're tuning into this recording, we're talking about the upcoming political, economic, and social opportunities that will exist in what could be the Mid Atlantic region's next state to legalize. We're talking about Pennsylvania, the Keystone State. My name is Tahit Chappelle, and I'm one of the many organizers building the Philadelphia Cannabis Business Association, a business association made up of more than a dozen stakeholders in and around the Philadelphia region who are banding together to fight for equitable cannabis policies, businesses, and access for Black and Brown communities. Joining me today for a very important Q&A is Councilmember Derek Green, who will be discussing the ongoing movement to legalize cannabis in Pennsylvania and what's at stake for a city like Philadelphia, a city of 1.6 million people with a 44% Black population settled across the city. When we talk about equity and reparations in cannabis, Philadelphia is primed to be the next Black city that could truly be impacted by legalization in a myriad of ways. Thank you so much for joining me on this important conversation, Councilmember Green.
No problem, Ty. Thank you for this opportunity to have this conversation. Thank you for the work that your organization is doing. When you talk about the 45% African American population in the city of Philadelphia, the largest city in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and the growth of this industry in the Mid Atlantic, it's important that we have conversations like this to really educate the public, especially the African American community and other communities of color, about cannabis and the myriad of opportunities and possibilities.
So let me set the lay of the land for our viewers, and by all means, after I'm done, feel free to fill in any of the gaps that I might have missed. In 2014, Philadelphia became the largest city to decriminalize cannabis. A lot of people actually don't know that. Pennsylvania, as a state, would then legalize cannabis for medicinal use in 2016, passing Act 16. To note, the state can only legalize cannabis through Pennsylvania's legislature, not through a ballot initiative. Currently, Pennsylvania has a Democratic governor and lieutenant governor, but the House and the Senate have Republican majorities. In 2018, the medical marijuana cannabis industry went online, and since then, all dispensary licenses and grower processor licenses have been distributed per the law. As of today, more than 630,000 patients and caregivers have signed up for the medical marijuana program, and the market itself has reached $3.4 billion in total sales since 2018, with dispensaries generating $2 billion of those sales. According to new data released in April of this year by Leafly, a fully legal Pennsylvania market could see $2.3 to $3.3 billion in revenue within 3 to 5 years of opening. That translates into roughly $500 million in annual tax revenue and could support between 32,000 to 47,000 legal cannabis jobs. If that market were to exist today, Pennsylvania would be America's third largest legal cannabis industry, only behind California and Colorado. Not everything is green, though. At least 20,000 people are still being arrested for marijuana possession every year in Pennsylvania. Specifically in Philadelphia, despite decriminalization, Black and brown people are still being targeted and harassed by police, disproportionately speaking, too. A recent ACLU report found that despite medical marijuana legalization across the state of Pennsylvania, Black people were 3 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession than white people. As Pennsylvania's neighbors of New Jersey and New York move forward with their legal markets, Pennsylvania is now a sitting question mark as to what this big agriculture state will do with one of the largest Black cities in America. With all of this being said, we welcome again Councilmember Derek Green, who will give us some deeper insight on what's happening in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia. Councilmember, I just set the lay of the land. Is there any other information that you think I might have missed, or think that you think viewers should know about Pennsylvania and Philadelphia before we get into the Q&A?
Well, I think you really provide a great framework for the current situation with Pittsburgh, but don't realize that Pennsylvania is a very large state. It's a commonwealth, has a very strong agricultural perspective. And so there's those opportunities that we need to think about. And when you look at the fact that we have a 25% poverty rate, about 45% African American population here in the city of Philadelphia, and the fact that other cities around Pennsylvania have already moved into adult use, it begs the question: where are we as a Commonwealth, and how are we as a city preparing for these opportunities, especially from the African American community, when we have such a large percentage of the city and there's such a high poverty rate? We should be preparing our constituents and giving them the knowledge the opportunities in this industry going forward and how we can best prepare them and prepare our city for the type of economic benefits as well as the health impacts as well.
And these questions are only becoming more and more important this year because in November, Philadelphians specifically, are going to be receiving their ballots or going to vote in November, and they're going to be seeing a ballot question around cannabis legalization, something that you personally have spearheaded within City Council. Can you give viewers a little bit of information on what this ballot question in Philadelphia is going to look like in November?
Well, first of all, the ballot question will give the citizens in the city of Philadelphia an opportunity to voice their perspective on adult use cannabis in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. By voting for this question, it will not make it legal in Philadelphia or anywhere in the Commonwealth. But I thought it was important to have this conversation because as you were laying the table for this discussion, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, when we brought medical cannabis here to Pennsylvania, Philadelphians really didn't have a perspective on that issue. So I thought by having this piece of legislation, which I introduced into the council and got passed to the Law and Government Committee to be put on the ballot on November 2nd, to really give citizens in Philadelphia their ability to weigh in on this question. But also, it can provide a further opportunity to indicate and provide guidance to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania what citizens in the city of Philadelphia think about adult use. So as they are debating the issue in Harrisburg, I know State Senator Sharif Street has been a strong proponent for legislation in this regard. Members of the House, like State Representative Jordan Harris, have also been very active in the conversation regarding the cannabis industry. So I think it just gives another opportunity to have this conversation and also raise the awareness of this industry because I think, just like you said earlier, there are a lot of aspects of this industry that a lot of constituents are not aware of. And I think this helps to further move the conversation forward and also educate people about cannabis in our Commonwealth and in the city of Philadelphia.
And what you mentioned too is very important, is that this question is literally just asking Philadelphians whether they urge or encourage Harrisburg to regulate, tax, and legalize cannabis for adult use. We're not legalizing anything yet. We're literally trying to see if Philadelphians actually want legalization to happen in Pennsylvania. It's an opportunity for the city to kind of flex its strength to show that it is united in this conversation around cannabis and equity. But like you mentioned, there's still a lot of misinformation around marijuana. There's still a lot of hesitancy and stigma around cannabis. For you leading into November, what are you and your office going to be doing to kind of combat that misinformation? We know that the war on drugs has indoctrinated people to believe that marijuana is a gateway drug for generations. And, there's still a lot of stigma in the city. So what are you and your office going to be kind of looking ahead of into November to start changing that narrative?
Well, in fact, I was talking with my chief of staff the other day. I've already received some calls from various ward leaders in the city of Philadelphia about this ballot question, plus another ballot question that I have coming up on November 2nd. So I'm going to be doing outreach to the various wards around the city of Philadelphia, so that way they can help inform their committee people about this issue. And so when voters go to the polls and their committee person provides them with some information, or they have questions for their committee person on election day or even prior to election day, because we now have mail-in ballots, he will be more informed about this issue. And we'll also look to other steps that we can take to help educate constituents regarding the ballot question and cannabis. I have done some outreach to some other grassroots community organizations to get their perspective on this as well. And we'll continue to do that going forward. We come back to council in a few short days. And so this provides another opportunity. Now that we're back in council, we have opportunities to do speeches and other ways to educate people and educate the public about this issue. And historically, prior to election day, you have various publications that do endorsements, and they'll be doing other type of voter guides about not only who's on the ballot, but what questions will be on the ballot as well.
You've been at the forefront of advocating for responsible cannabis legalization, whether it's for medicinal and now moving into adult use. People who are going to be viewing this recording, they may be in Philadelphia, they may be outside of Philadelphia. They may not know whether or not their elected official or their politicians feel the same way that you do. In many ways, a lot of council members in your position in other cities do not speak the way that you speak when it comes to cannabis. What made you an advocate, or what made you more informed to kind of take this position in general?
Well, it's been an evolution. For me, I am someone does a lot of work in the autism space. I have a son who's on the autism spectrum, and I started learning more and more about various advocates who were promoting the benefits of cannabis in other jurisdictions, and that led to some of my curiosity about cannabis, and starting to see more and more information about the intersection between cannabis as a possible source for those who are looking for some type of medication as they're dealing with that learning difference. And so that's what led me to get more information about cannabis and put me in this perspective now. Also, from a personal level, my grandfather, my father's side, was a farmer. And so having that background of having farming in my family background, it also led to additional curiosity about cannabis and then learning about a lot of the misinformation that you made reference to a few moments ago as I did my research. And I think this is an opportunity for not only those, and we've had that with the medical cannabis for those that have on the autism spectrum or other differences or ailments that they need help with, but also from an economic opportunity. When you look at how this industry has really impacted various states around this nation, Colorado in particular, and now you're seeing other states following suit. I think it provides a real opportunity, but we also have to be careful in reference to how legislation is drafted to make sure it's equitable for people, especially those who traditionally have been left out of new industries and new economic opportunities.
And that's a great segue into our last question here is dream a little bit with us. What does a perfect cannabis legalization market look like for you? What exists? Who can participate? What's available? What does that future look like for you if you were able to get everything that you wanted?
Well, it's interesting. So I remember visiting my first grow location and dispensary some years ago in DC. A friend of mine that's also a fraternity brother that I did not realize that he was in a space. He had a business that I thought was more of, and when you listen to the title of his business, I thought it was a market in DC. And then as medical cannabis was coming into Pennsylvania, he started to inquire about it, and that's when I really learned the nature of his business. But in many ways, his dispensaries and grow locations are no different than a wellness spa or a pharmacy. In fact, you have much stronger medicines at a pharmacy um, than you would have at a dispensary. So having a dispensary or dispensaries around the city of Philadelphia that were owned by a diversity of people. Where you had African Americans who owned both dispensaries and grow licenses, and also were able to work with others and other cities around the Commonwealth to create an ecosystem and an economic platform that could hire young people who are coming out of high school who may be interested in this industry, who they themselves want to be future growers or entrepreneurs in the space. I mean, that's the type of dream I would have, that you would have the ability for those who have been exposed, who have had some exposure to cannabis, who are now able to go into this business in a legalized way to be able to not only be employed, but also have the ability to start their own business going forward and provide jobs and economic benefit to a city that has high levels of poverty and a strong number of African Americans, and would like to see them fully employed in this industry from not just worker but also employer as well.
That's a great dream to have. And, there's still time and the conversations are ongoing in this state. November 2nd, Philadelphians will see on their ballot if they urge Harrisburg to tax legalize, regulate cannabis for adult use. Again, it will not legalize cannabis if they vote yes, but it will show that Philadelphia is serious and ready for legalization. Councilmember Derek Green, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for continuing to inform the public on this very important issue. I appreciate your time.
No problem. Thank you, and I appreciate this great work and advocacy that you and your organization is doing to educate people about this issue.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Black Cannabis Week. Again, my name is Tahit Chappelle. I'm one of the organizers of the Philadelphia Cannabis Business Association. You will learn more about our organization as we move forward and as we get closer to November and beyond. So thank you so much for joining, and have a great rest of your conference.